had a dream last night, and oh, it felt so true. I dreamed of you, and you were dreaming of me, dreaming of you. You were dreaming of me, dreaming of you. It was a dazzling day, the air was clear as glass. We sunned ourselves like royal beasts in the tender grass. Then we drowsed and dozed in the grass. And the birds sang a feathery opera, and the butterflies fluttered by, and I watched you dreaming away, dreaming away, dreaming away, under a luminous sky. Then in the dream within the dream, you and I both awoke, and at the very same moment both of us spoke, and we said, I had a dream last night, and oh, it felt so true. I dreamed of you, and you were dreaming of me, dreaming of you. You were dreaming of me, dreaming of you. It was a dazzling night, the air was still as glass. We yawned and stretched like royal beasts in the tender grass. Then we slumbered on in the grass, and an owl sang a bluesy lullaby, and the fireflies glimmered away, till the night turned and swallowed its tail, swallowed its tail, swallowed its tail, and dreamed us into the day. Then in the dream within the dream, you and I both awoke, and at the very same moment both of us spoke, and we said, I had a dream last night, and oh, it felt so true. I dreamed of you, and you were dreaming of me, dreaming of you. You were dreaming of me, dreaming of you. I had a dream last night, and oh, it felt so true. I dreamed of you, and you were dreaming of me, dreaming of you. You were dreaming of me. You were dreaming of me. You were dreaming of me, dreaming of you.
Snackable mental health. Today we have Marie-Lynn Hammond, and that was wonderful. By the way, Marie-Lynn Hammond, as well as my new co-host today is Paul. He's taking the place of Karen, who's off sick. Marie-Lynn Hammond is a bilingual singer-songwriter, editor, published writer, and playwright. Former CBC Radio host, visual artist, and occasional poet who happily moved to Cobourg, the shining metropolis of Cobourg, 9 years ago. A founding member of String Band, one of Canada's seminal folk groups and indie rock pioneers. Indie records, sorry. Indie rock's a little bit different. She's a little folky.
Yeah, a little more folky.
Marie-Lynn is known for original songs, which often tell uniquely Canadian stories. Passionate environmentalist and animal advocate, she can frequently be found rescuing abandoned cats. MarieLynnHammond.com is her page, and it's cool to look that up. You can tell even more of what she's all about by that website. And she's here in the studio with us, and she started off with a song called
A Dream Last Night, which was actually, I actually had a dream once, and in that dream I was having a dream. And I woke up and thought, wow, that was interesting. And so that's how that little song came about.
That's incredible. And I wanted to do the preamble before you sang, but I thought it would be so much more beautiful if you just stepped right into it. And that's how we evolve. So yeah, to tell the audience why does music and poetry, which is how we founded our relationship, how does that apply to mental health?
Well, I would say that it can be very therapeutic in many ways because you get to pour out your feelings into either a song or a poem or both. I like to craft my lyrics, almost like so that they are like poetry, but then I set them to music, or sometimes they come together. But yeah, I think it's a way to get feelings out and in a safe way. And whether you perform or read them or not, I mean, I didn't perform for, as a teenager. I was really shy. I just did it all by myself in my room, and it really...
And you started with poetry.
Yeah, I started with poetry, but then
and
I
they
found
turn
this,
into lyrics.
and then I started making up songs. I didn't have a guitar. My parents weren't musical. They didn't recognize they had a musical daughter. So I just made up the songs a cappella, meaning without an instrument. I just kind of sang in my room, and not for anybody. And then eventually got a guitar, and when I was 17, and by then it was the 60s, late 60s, and everybody was playing guitar, and you didn't need music teachers. You could buy a book to learn chords, or your friends would teach you chords, right?
You just play somewhere at a party or in a garage or something?
Yeah, or there were coffee houses then. There were lots of sort of little open mic type places where you could get up and...
Speakeasies?
I had to be I had to be pushed on stage to perform because I was very shy back then. But when I saw that people reacted positively, talk about mental health, that was a really boost. I had no confidence as a child. I was raised in a dysfunctional family and with 2 alcoholics for parents. And one of them, my father, was a violent alcoholic, and we moved a lot because we were Air Force based, and in those days they moved you a lot. I think I moved 16 times before I was 18 years old.
That's not easy for a child, or especially a teenager.
Yeah,
getting used to getting your sea legs. In some town you make friends and then you leave. Yeah, it's difficult.
But anyway, back to, so that's why for me, art really saved me in many ways from feeling completely depressed all the time.
I found therapy in poetry as well. I'm not really an instrument player, but I I write to kind of appease the demons in my head or outside of my head or whatever, and
wherever they are.
That's been such a structuring poetry around my day is something. Sometimes I feel like I need to go, write some poetry.
Yeah.
Alcoholism.
Oh yeah. You just want to get into that?
Well, we did mention that. I'm still once we brought up sea legs, I'm still getting my sea legs, or rather putting the training wheels on this podcast. So segues are still new, as well as the fact that I go on tangents and I'm sometimes called Random Brandon. I've also got guests in the room, and my listeners really don't need to know too much more about me because I'm always going to be here.
Okay, well, you ask me whatever you want.
So I was just like the alcoholism aspect has been frequented in many lives, children's lives. We did talk briefly about at our last meeting. We did talk about the program and adult children of alcoholics and all those things that Bill W.'s teachings offer the world. And what I wanted to say about that was that I do kind of prescribe to the I guess the word might be efficacy of his teachings, in the fact that I use mantras a lot when I'm...
Who's his?
Bill W. is the gentleman that created the 12-step program.
Oh, the 12-step, yeah.
And as well as the adult children of alcoholics branched off that, Alateen, right. Al-Anon, AA, NA, GA, all that stuff, yeah. And I'm no stranger to that universe, and I still use the mantras just for today, one day at a time, easy does it, let go and let God, in my head when I'm going through something that has nothing to do with drinking.
Yeah. So a lot of wisdom there. I mean, I didn't discover any of that stuff, or the Al-Anon or those. What I found, and I think it was in my early 30s, I was reading an article in Ms. magazine. I'm, was very feminist. I am still very feminist. And it was about adult children of alcoholics. And it was a mind blower to me, because they talked about the roles of children in those families. And often the oldest child, which I am, the oldest of 3 girls, is called the responsible child, or often the hero child. Because when your parents are drinking, someone has to step up and be the adult, and often that would be me. Now, my parents they rarely were drunk both at the same time. They almost unconsciously seemed to sort of one would stay sober enough to get things done, and then the other one would be like more incapacitated. That was usually my father. But occasionally there would be weekends when they would both be drinking. And I had to take care of my little sisters to some extent.
Okay.
So then often there's the middle child, or the second one is often the lost child. And that was kind of like my middle sister, who was very quiet and sweet and never said anything and had no confidence. And then the youngest one, she was like the semi-rebel entertainer child. She was funny. She distracted us from everything going on in the family by being funny. And then really then she was the one that had serious mental health issues by the time she was, she made her first suicide attempt or gesture when she was 15.
Okay.
And then another one at 16, and luckily was found the second time before anything serious happened, and then a third attempt later that was more a cry for help. So that was all part of how the alcoholism affected us. But I left home early as soon as I could, and then apparently the drinking got worse because I was a little bit because of that oldest child thing. I'd be mom and dad. We couldn't talk about it in the family. I would have to leave them letters that I would write, 2-page letters. I'd leave it on their bed and say, Mom and Dad, you got to stop this. It's too hard for us. And then usually they would be sober for the next weekend, right? We would have a sober week or so, and then it would start again. And again, I could never speak to. It was never talked. We were in such denial as a family. It never got spoken of. And then I left home, and then my mother in particular apparently drank more because I had been kind of a bit of a rock that she leaned on. But kids shouldn't have to be the rock for their parents, right?
That's exactly what I was just going to say that children should not have to,
be the strong ones.
Harbor all that.
Yeah.
In their growth as human beings.
Yeah.
But the trauma that exudes, and that there can be suicide through things going that badly.
Well, that sister has since she was diagnosed as bipolar within a few years. And so, she was on meds for a while, and she and I have a slightly challenging relationship because sometimes she's up and sometimes she hates me. And I joke that sometimes she sort of fires me as a sister, and then she rehires me as a sister. But now that we're older, she's a little bit calmer now, a little bit more even keeled. But yeah, that's also. I mean, it's been hard obviously for her, and now she's my only sibling because the middle sister sadly died at 47 of cancer. So you guys probably were almost forced to get back into each other's lives. Well, I think that's partly why the youngest sister, the one who's bipolar, she also was diagnosed with cancer a few years ago. She's had 2 bouts of breast cancer, and I think she felt because our parents are now gone that I was the only living relative left.
And the rock.
Yeah, kind of. And so she, I think, didn't want to die not speaking to me. That had happened with my father. They were very close in many ways, even though he drank, but she was his favorite. And then they had a falling out, and then he died, and she hadn't reconciled with him.
Oh, that's
so
tough.
I think that's why she thought, maybe she should make her peace with me, just in case something happened.
Well, that's it. I mean, you can cry at a grave all you want, but maybe crying with each other before that does happen can really kind of rectify things in your life, in their life, in his life.
Very well said. Yes, indeed.
So bipolar is a condition that gets thrown around a lot these days. They used to call it, growing up, it was called manic depression.
Yes.
And
right.
now it's
bipolar.
known as bipolar. Any thoughts on manic episodes or depression?
When she would be in the up phase, she still is very impulsive. She's been, I shouldn't say that.
There's the mania where the impulsiveness comes in.
Married and divorced 4 times. I did the opposite. I never married once. I mean, my father was our only male role model, and he was terrifying. When he was sober, he was kind of distant and impatient and not very demonstrative. His family background was messed up too, and then he had PTSD from World War II. 75 missions as a pathfinder over Germany, meaning flying alone ahead of the bombing squadron, dropping the flares.
For where they were supposed to
Yeah,
bomb.
yeah. And so they would be sitting ducks for the German guns, and he got shot. He almost didn't make it back once, but limped back with one engine over the channel, and has got two distinguished flying crosses for his record. But all that to say that the PTSD was extreme, and so. So it was difficult. Back to the manic or the bipolar. And so then when she would crash, she would be really down, right? And that was when she would be suicidal, and it was frightening for all of us. And my father also made a suicide attempt or gesture when he was older, and I think it was probably sometime after my mother finally left him. And so the family, we had all kinds of things to deal with, and it was not an easy road. But my sister, the sister with bipolar, she managed to have a good career eventually, and very well respected in human resources. But her issues would manifest more in the family, not so much in the workplace.
My recent thoughts have been towards mental health conditions and how they can be constructive. How can they possibly serve you in a way that you can turn them around to kind of make them a superpower?
Oh, interesting.
And I'm very adamant about it's not at all get over yourself or let it go, or it's how can we get this, if it is possible, and I believe it is, to serve you or to be constructive with it. Constructive depression, constructive anxiety, constructive even things as the scary as schizophrenia can be, but making that constructive for you in a positive way. How do you anchor that into your life to make it a superpower? And that one of the reasons I created Snackable Mental Health was to push for that kind of program, really, is to not be consumed by it, so to speak.
And how do you,
reframe it?
Reframe it, yeah. And you seem to have done that really well in your life. But back then, I'm trying to think, how do you think someone could deal with depression? And I mean, because that was probably the thing that I dealt with the most.
I think you handled it with poetry.
Oh, I see. By using it as a creative
that was
outlet.
your outlet for the madness that can be a depressive cycle or.
Well, it's funny. I had a major accident. I don't know how much time we have. I ended up with a brain injury.
We're good.
And after you have a brain injury, they follow you. The psychiatrists, you see them every 3 or 4 months, and they check to make sure that you haven't had a real personality shift with the brain injury. You have to fill out, questionnaires and things. And because I've never slept that well, that's also partly hypervigilance from growing up in a...
That's an interesting set of words, hypervigilance. What does that mean to you?
That means that because I was the oldest and also feeling like responsible, that a lot of the drinking happened and bad stuff happened late at night or in the night. So I was always I was listening for sounds, and what's going on is I didn't even know that my father was violent to my mother until I really probably was in my early teens. But, what's he doing? Where is he? Is that him coming? He would come into my bedroom late at night. It was frightening, and stand there and just kind of hover over my bed. And I was afraid that he would hurt me or do something to me. He only did a couple of times, but so you're hypervigilant. So you're always, any sound will wake me up. I'm a light sleeper, and after my brain injury,
on guard all the time.
Yes, and after the brain injury, when I was almost, they thought maybe I was having slightly manic. That I was getting more of the manic end of the manic/depressive thing. And because I couldn't stop thoughts, I'd lie there at night and ideas would cycle and words would cycle through my brain. Now, sometimes when I'm working on a poem or a song, that's when that happens. And so I've learned now, I keep a notebook.
If you can
by the
maybe
bed.
get some positive ruminating in there
I
somehow.
get up and I write the lines down, especially if I'm thinking about it, this could be a song or a poem. And I've just accepted that, okay, so I'm going to be awake for a couple of hours in the middle of the night. And now that I'm, semi-retired, I'll just have a nap in the afternoon, You just kind of work with what you have. So
Incredible.
Yeah, that was an interesting little insight.
I know the hypervigilance has been a word that I've heard tossed around over the last little while, and I'm very aware of it, but I haven't heard it been used in my world until recently.
Okay. Yeah.
So back to poetry. Yeah, we met at the Coburg Poetry Workshop.
Well, and I heard you read back when it was at Meet at 6.
Back when I was going through my tortured, troublesome time.
Possibly. I don't remember you.
My tortured...
it was
I've recently said goodbye to that. But we did read together at 66 King and now at the...
Well, I didn't read then. I was just a listener then, but we have both done the open mic, I think, at the poetry.
And it's
Thursday.
so much fun. Mm-hmm. And now we're together as members of Spirit of the Hills,
yes,
a local group.
Writers group, and visual arts, too.
Yeah.
It's both.
And now that we have you, I wanted to introduce a poem. And maybe we'll do some preamble for the poem and then cut right into it.
Okay.
What is Clouds and Horses all about?
Well, people that are into poetry know that often if you're in a group, they'll give you what we call a prompt. And the prompt is write something about this concept. The prompt might be water, or the prompt might be change, the word change, write a poem. But this was a prompt from our previous poet laureate in Coburg, Jessica Outram, and the prompt was moment, about being in the moment. And I'm passionate about animals, and I have on and off in my life ridden horses. And I've owned a few, but folk singers should never own horses because you can't really afford it. But I ride a friend's horse now once in a while. I've never owned them very long. And but I find that because, this kind of explains it, horses and animals live in the moment. They do remember things, but generally speaking, they're present. If they're sitting there looking at you, they're not thinking about what they ate for dinner last night. They're looking at you to see what you're going to do, right? And horses, they are prey animals, Prey animals. They are animals that get eaten by other animals. They're not carnivores. So they have to be they're like
alert.
Me, they have to be hypervigilant, right?
Hypervigilant, yes.
But, it's just...
Rabbits are a really good example of that.
Yeah.
They're always looking for someone that might eat them.
Yeah, and horses, that's as well. But not in the crazy way that I had to be hypervigilant. It's more just part of their being, just to be fully aware. So when I ride a horse, I end up being fully aware as well, because I notice suddenly their ears will flick and I'm thinking, well, what are they looking at? And then I look carefully and, oh my gosh, in the bushes, there's a wild turkey that's possibly going to pop out.
A venomous turkey.
Scare the heck out of us, yeah. Or maybe there's a deer, and with her fawn in the dappled shade, and the horse has seen it before I have, and I get to see it because the horse showed me that fawn. So I love, and also because horses can be very dangerous in terms of, I've had a major fall. That was how I got my brain injury. Because he got stung by a wasp and he bucked like a rodeo horse. And
Goodness.
I'm a good rider. I couldn't stay on past the third buck. But so you have to pay attention. When you're riding, you've got to be aware of what they might react to. So this is called Clouds.
You came out with the prompt of Clouds and Horses.
Well, yeah, the prompt was in the moment, and the poem is Clouds and Horses. And
so we're going to say goodbye to Marie-Lynn Hammond, and I thank you so much for your candidness and your vulnerability and your fearlessness, really.
Well,
and
when you get older, the older I get, the more that comes out.
That's incredible. I hope to adopt some of those skills. And thanks again, Paul, for filling in for Karen today. You were wonderful.
Do you have something to say? I mean, we've been doing all the talking.
Well, actually, Yeah, I just fascinating. You guys are remarkable together. You're a remarkably honest woman, and it's been a pleasure to witness you.
So let's finish off with clouds and horses.
Okay. This is a moment of clouds and horses. A trusting buckskin carries me past a field where 2 copper bays and a palomino raise their heads to taste the air and watch us. The buckskin's ears flick back and forth as he decodes the world around him. Like all horses, he lives always and only in the present, and each hoof fall anchors me there too. He lifts me up, and I sit tall among drifts of snowy cumulus that gather us into themselves as we become the infinite sky and this moment.
Snackablementalhealth.ca